Now, again, a lot of you are familiar with the two powers stuff that I do and talk about, especially again if you've read the book. But for those who are not, of course, you have the Shema, very familiar creedal statement from Judaism. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. This is, I bring this up because how could a Jew affirm that and then write this? No one has ever seen God. The only God who is at the Father's side. Okay. How do you pull that off? He has made him known. Now, John is a Jew. He knows the Shema. What in the world is going on here? At one time in Judaism used to affirm something that they used to talk about positively as the two powers in heaven idea. This is not dualism, one good guy, one bad guy, of equal weight. Okay, it's not Marvel Comics or anything like that. These were two good guys, okay, two powers in heaven. And that idea falls into ill repute, disrepute, at around the 2nd century. Again, not coincidentally the time, when we have the advent of Christianity and a few other things going on. But Judaism at one point in its history essentially had a Godhead teaching. And they get it from their Old Testament. So when you have a Jew like John who writes this, of course, knowing the Shema, he's not thinking when he's writing this, oh, this is good. I get to deny my faith in the God of Israel now. Okay, he's not thinking that at all. So he's sort of the exemplar for just the average question, even for Jewish converts in the book of Acts or whatever. How is it that these people, Jews, who refused even on pain of death to worship another God, how could they at the same time turn around and embrace Jesus as God in the flesh, worship him, sing praises to him, again, talk about him the way they do? How could they do that and not feel like they were violating the formative creedal statement of the Old Testament? How does that work? And it's a big deal. I mean, it's still a big deal for Jews I've met. Again, we're going to go through this real quickly, but there's a whole rabbinic discussion about the two powers prior to the 2nd century. And just an example of one verse, the rabbis would pick up on different verses that they knew, looking at it, was a little bit odd. There was something odd in them. Genesis 19:24, this is the Sodom and Gomorrah story, which I'm sure all of you have read. But you look at this, and what's odd about it? You tell me. Yeah, it sounds like there's two Yahwehs. Yahweh raining fire upon Sodom and Gomorrah, sulfurous fire, and that sulfurous fire happens to be from Yahweh. So how can Yahweh, send this sulfurous fire from Yahweh? It was just odd. And rabbis would notice these things and discuss them. Again, the major book on this, if you're interested, is still in print. It was printed in 1977, The Two Powers in Heaven, by Alan Siegel. Siegel passed away a few years ago. He was a Jewish scholar, rabbinic scholar, and his book is about the history of this idea in Judaism. He goes through all the rabbinic material, again, establishing the fact that, yep, we used to teach this. And boy, it's heretical, isn't it? Because he was a Jew. He doesn't want to go along with it, but his book is just about, this used to be part of our theology. Again, until the 2nd century A.D. Other passages, Daniel, again, you have the Ancient of Days seated, and then you have, the description, which is, all familiar to us, hair like lamb's wool, thrown in tongues of flame, just like Ezekiel 1. I mean, we know who this is, the wheels, the whole bit. And then the court sat, again, divine council meeting, the books were open, one like a human being, one like a son of man, a human one, came with the clouds of heaven, dominion, glory, and kingship were given to him. There's something else about this passage that I don't have in red. I don't even know if you can see the color there. this whole motif of the coming upon the clouds, which I'm not going to get into specifically here. I'll get into some other two powers stuff, but I'll mention this much. In the ancient Near Eastern world, the epithet, the one who comes with the clouds, or the one who comes upon the clouds, or the one who rides the chariot in the clouds, something like that, that was a known epithet for Baal. Okay, Baal is not an underling. He's not just an angel. Okay, I'm saying this for like Jehovah's Witnesses, because Jehovah's Witnesses like to take deity language used of Jesus and say, oh, he's just an angel and a created being and all this kind of stuff. Well, the coming upon the clouds thing is a big deal because of the way it gets used in the New Testament when Jesus is on trial, because it goes back to Daniel 7. But anyway, you get this well-known deity phrase. The Old Testament writers use this deity phrase that everybody, Jew or outside of Judaism, whether you're an Israelite or not, they know what this is, because Baal was such a big deal in the ancient world. Baal was worshipped even into the Roman period. Okay, he's just a big figure. And the biblical writers in the Old Testament use the phrase 4 times of Yahweh of Israel. And the reason was Baal was a storm god. He was the god that was perceived as giving us rain. Baal's a wonderful guy because he gives us rain, and that means our crops grow. That means we get to eat. Okay, it means our animals get to eat. We're alive because Baal sends us rain, and we can survive, and oh, he's wonderful. Okay? Well, the biblical writers are like, no. Baal isn't the one who controls this stuff. It's Yahweh of Israel. So they would take this label and stick it on Yahweh, to make this theological point. Well, the only place they don't do that, there's one other occurrence, and it's Daniel 7. Here it's applied to a second figure, aside from the God of Israel. And so Jesus knows this. I mean, the Jews knew it. This was one of the primary texts in Judaism to reinforce the two powers in heaven teaching, was this one right here, Daniel 7. So when Jesus is on trial in front of Caiaphas, and Caiaphas says, come on, tell us who you are. Quit beating around the bush. And he says, okay, listen up, Caiaphas. I don't want you to miss this. Hereafter you will see the Son of Man coming upon the clouds, in great glory. You want to know who I am? I'm the guy in Daniel 7 who's the cloud rider. And Caiaphas tears his clothes, says this is blasphemy. He knows instantly what Jesus is saying. And every Jew would have, because they have this two powers thing. There's Yahweh, but then there's like this other Yahweh.